episode on the art study of you. I am extremely excited. I wore my Mother's Day shirt when this episode comes out. Hopefully it'll be in the month of May. So we'll be celebrating mothers. And what better person to have on than Martha? I am super excited because she is going to help all of us understand and recognize the power of our voice, the power of getting it out there and breaking through these mental blocks. And I'm super excited to have her on the show. She's been a great friend, a great inspiration. So let me give you some back history because we're going to touch a lot on these. First off, at the age of 21, she sailed around the world. That's going to be a fun conversation to have. Has been studying voice and the use of voice since she's been 20 years old, practicing Kira yoga for over 20 years. A couple of accomplishments, big accomplishments, right? Online business of master in academics. I'm going to say this wrong. Estill voice model, model level 1 and 2, New England Conservatory of Music in Boston. Is a mouthful there. CCM voice model at a Shenandoah Conservatory, Washington, D.C., UCLA Bachelor of Theater of Arts in Los Angeles, American Music and Dramatic Academy in New York City, winner of the Carol Burnett Music Theater Awards in Los Angeles, winner of National Music Theater Awards in San Francisco, winner of National Scholarship Award, American Music and Dramatic Academy in New York City. We got through all that. Martha, thank you so much for being on. If you please could just take 5 to 7 minutes, kind of give us a little bit about what makes you, your background, and obviously tell us a little bit about your why.
Oh, it's so great to be here, Cameron. Thank you for having me on your show. I agree. It's been really fun getting to know you, not just professionally, but as a friend. I absolutely am passionate about helping people find their voice. And of course, the first voice I had to find was my own. And I come from a performance arts background, as you could see from what Cameron spoke to. I spent a lot of time on stage and in training at UCLA in Los Angeles and in New York. But what was going on for me was that I was in a model where I was competing, winning, and achieving. And I was really good at it. I come from a family of champions. And so I was just good with that pedal to the metal approach to life. However, it was coming at a cost to my own inner peace of mind, because competing, winning, and achieving was never going to completely fulfill me. And so I started to realize that, through a process of my 20s, and I was able to show up in new ways with my work. Certainly, I have continued to perform, but also as a coach, I've really loved helping people find their most powerful voice, because finding your voice is a journey of finding yourself. And that was really where I felt my work hit its stride. And that's what I'm passionate about. And I'm really excited to dive in today into giving you some tools you can start using right away to help you find your voice, whether you are a business professional and you need to speak with power, or whether you're someone who's always wanted to learn how to sing. We can talk a little bit about that too. But the voice is the voice, and it's one instrument, and it lives inside of you. And it's really important that you understand a little bit about how you're using that instrument, but also what is your consciousness? What is your way of being that's behind your instrument?
Oh, I love it. I love it. There's so much to unpack, but before we get into some of the really deep dives of stuff, because you said something, a couple of things, and I know this obviously from our conversations, but bring us into that space of, you come from this long history of champions. Now, I know a little bit about what that means, but please dive into this, what you mean. There's two questions here. One, give us into that insight of being that champion and the performing and what it took to be there, but then also how you lost yourself. Like you said, you didn't really find your voice. So bring us into that space and help us understand a little bit better what you mean by that.
Happy to talk about that. It's an interesting question. My family on my father's side is a long line of ministers and preachers. And so there were 5 generations of ministers and preachers. And if you look at my family lineage, across the lines, we actually have 32 ministers and preachers in our family. So I come
Wow.
from a family of spirituality and faith. And on the other side of that, my immediate siblings, my own bio tribe, my oldest brother is a Hall of Fame swim coach. So, just a phenomenal swim coach. And he actually worked with me when I was competing for some of those top performance awards earlier in my career, in how to get my mindset straight for really performing it when the stakes are really high. Additionally, I have another brother who is a tremendous athlete, a tennis player, skier, and golfer. And my third brother is an open water swimmer who has actually set world records. So it's interesting. We come from this family of people that know how to focus and know how to work hard and know how to go for what we really want. And that is a huge blessing. But what I found for my own personal journey was that I needed to bring in the spirituality, the centering and calming pieces, so that I could see the bigger picture and not get caught in this tunnel vision of just being like that racehorse with blinders on, where they don't see anything else except running on the track, coming out of the gate fast and winning. I needed to broaden my perspective and really come in with a consciousness that included other people's reality, not just my own.
Wow. Wow. That was powerful. So help me understand though, because a lot of people who listen to this or probably don't come from that pedigree of championships and winners, right? So where's the distinction between how did you get lost in trying that comparison game, right? You have this Hall of Fame swim coach, right? You have a brother who's broken records in swimming. You have so you are embodied around three brothers who are just high performing athletes, tunnel vision. Where were you in this mix? Did you feel like you were lost? Did you lose yourself? I mean, help us understand, because I can kind of get a sense, it being that, there was my older brother, he was drafted out of high school in baseball. And so there was always this level that we had to try to perform at. So help me understand, help our listeners understand kind of where we were in that whole space.
I think that's another great question. I was the youngest of the four. And so and the only girl, right? So there's a dynamic right there between, the boys who were taught to compete and win and achieve. And the girls are taught, particularly girls of my generation, we were taught to be nice. We were taught to conform and bend our own desires to those around us. And I think also what happened for me is my parents were divorced. I know that's a big topic for you, Cameron, and your audience, when I was 5 years old. And so there was a lot of trauma in my younger childhood. And I think that finding my voice and learning to perform became a way for me to strengthen some of my insecurities after having lost my family to divorce and a lot of dysfunction within my family. So it was about achieving and winning, but I think the culture of my family shifted when the divorce happened. It really did. It wasn't that we weren't still high achievers, but we actually had to focus on our own inner emotional journeys. And we all know that top athletes have their mindset together in a major, major way. Because if you don't, you can't work at that high level.
Okay, we need to back. I want to dive into this a little bit more, because this is very key to a lot of people, right? Going through traumatic experiences at a young age, if not dealt with, often manifest themselves later on in life. Outbreaks, disobedience, right? Nonconformance, and like you had talked about. So I want to really get into this, because I know a lot of listeners are going to, are females, young listeners, that have that kind of the same mindset, conform, right? Men are the high performers, and that's what they do. And the females are just kind of, hey, just do and go along and be pretty, just do what you do. Help us understand that transition from once the divorce happened at 5. How did you cope? what was the coping mechanisms that you did throughout the 5 years old, and then till you could recognize, this is how I'm coping with, this trauma?
I think coping initially, it's interesting, but when I went to, when you go to first grade, right,
Mm-hmm.
which is right about that time, I would have been about 6 years old, they say to you, what's your favorite subject? And I would always say singing. And I think I coped by starting just the joy of singing, because when we are singing, the voice is actually a vibrational instrument. It lives inside us. It's inside your throat, inside your voice box. And
Mm-hmm.
your vocal folds are actually vibrating and coming together hundreds of times per second to make a noise. It's like a violin bow on a string. So it's vibrational. And I think when I started to sing in elementary school, I was lucky that they had a choral program as a young person, and that musicianship was really valued. I started to tap into the joy that's accessible to us through not just music, but through whatever brings you joy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I was able to identify early on, and it was just really, I want to say, the grace. It was an act of grace that I was able to say, when I sing, I feel joyful, I feel happy. And so I had that. And I think moving through high school and college, it's interesting because I was very good at mathematics, and I was put into an accelerated mathematics program.
Mm-hmm.
But back at that time, girls weren't supposed to be so good at math and science.
Nope.
Right.
Nope.
And so I was not encouraged that way. In fact, I just wasn't paid attention to. And my family was in such turmoil at home that I didn't get support at home. So I sort of lost that part of myself. But it was okay for me as a girl to be a singer, to be in choir, to be in theater. And so I sort of went in the direction that I was supported in. And in that process, I met a mentor, a teacher, and her name is Estill. And she became a pole star for me in the dark times. And I know that research now shows that it just takes one person to make a difference in the life of a child who is going through a trauma. Just one person. And she was really there for me. And she helped me find my voice. I just showed up at those lessons every single week. And I didn't know it at the time, but she was slowly building my sense of self, and she was building my sense of confidence.
Oh, stop. You guys do need to pause and rewind what she just said, because this is someone who has been through fire and traumatic experience, right? I mean, look, divorce sucks. I don't care who you are. You hear all these, well, it's an amicable breakup. No, it's not. There's nothing good nothing good ever comes from divorce, right? It's two grown adults for some reason cannot figure out a way to mend whatever, or be on the same page, right? Or, be conditioned to saying, hey, you do your part, I'll do my part, and together we can build, right? It doesn't happen that way, not all the time. And so, oh man, there's so much to unpack, because your voice, the way to express how you were feeling, when you were feeling, was through singing. And it gave you a sense of control of, I may not control everything around me, but one thing I can control is how I sing, when I sing, what I sing, how I feel. And I love that, because singing is so powerful, because the way you sing and how you sing, the songs you sing, right? Man, it is an expression of your emotions. And I love how you talked about that. It was just, when you're sad, oftentimes you sing sad songs. When you're jubilee, that's what you sing. When you're excited and I'm going to go win and crush it, you listen to music. And oh man, there's so much we could go into that. And I appreciate you doing and opening up with that. And let me ask you this question. Your teacher, Nell, was it correct?
Estill.
Nell, did she ever ask you, "Oh, how are you doing, sweetie?" Or "How's it going?" Or "I'm so sorry you're going through this." Or was she focused on, we're going to get you to sing the best that you can sing?
Both. Both. So I would show up to the lessons, and her house was in Los Altos Hills, California, and the music room she was in overlooked this beautiful glen. It was just like a valley almost. I'd look out at those mountains, and she'd look at me and she'd say, "How are you?" What a question, right? And whatever I was going through, whether it was the subsequent drug addiction that happened in my family, whether it was the illness that happened in my family, all the things that we went through, I felt like I could tell her. So she was a close, trusted friend and mentor. And then she pushed me because she herself won the Metropolitan Opera auditions, which is a huge deal in the singing world. She's an extremely accomplished singer. And so she had the skill and the tools and the know-how to really push me. And I was open to that. And so she'd tune into me and really hear me. And then we'd go and we'd really, really train. And that was what synced up with my family of champions. It was never going to work for me, right? To not work with someone who couldn't really show up and do the thing.
Oh, okay. Hold on. You said a couple of things that are really showing up, right? As a child, you don't want to always be asked. Look, when I was going through my divorce, one thing that was hard was always being asked, "How are you doing?" Because I knew what was behind the loaded question, right? But and look, not putting blame on anybody, because when you've never been through divorce, your family and your friends, they don't know how to respond. They don't know how to help you, right? There's just like, "Well, how are you?" Sincerely, they're asking, "Well, how are you feeling?" or "How are you doing?" And they just want to be like a sounding board. Annelle became that sounding board for you. She'd ask you the question and then you would tell her, and she goes, "Okay, here's what we're going to do." Right? She, at that young age, said, we're going to get you out of a space that you can't control. All the, like you said, the drug addiction, the stuff that happened, the divorce, all of that, the broken of trust. We're going to put it right here, and we're going to set that off to the side, because when we are here, this is going to be the space. This is going to be your new norm. Over there, don't worry about it. But right here, this is your new norm while you're with me. And we are going to sing that. When you hear she pushed you, she probably made you sing and sing when you're like, "I can't." Nope. Keep going. Keep going.
Right.
How was that? Or how did that shape you? Those lessons that she would not allow you to self-loathe or have self-pity or woe is me. How, when she was pushing you to be the best version and finding your voice, how has that helped you throughout to where you are now?
I think it's everything. Because I think when children are in middle school and high school years, if they have just that one person, that one coach, that one teacher that sees their potential, that sees who they really are. Because when you're with a family that's going through the divorce, they can't show up for you in ways that they'd be able to if they weren't dealing with a divorce, right? It's just hard. But if you have that friend, mentor, teacher that sees you and says, "I really see this in you, and I'm going to help you develop your strengths." So to connect the dots here, I think what it taught me was to work and live not from the trauma, but from my strengths, what I knew I could do well, and to build that new paradigm, and to get myself to a top performance school where everybody else was doing the same thing as well as I could do it, and better.
Guys, if you're listening to this on, all the streaming services, you need to listen to that part on the YouTube channel. I know Spotify has it now. And the reason is because when you need to watch Martha's face light up as she talks about Annelle, and she talks about this person who did not care about what she was going through. She cared about making her the best version. And you can see that in her face. I don't know if you noticed this, but you kind of perked up a little bit more every time you talk about her, and you
Mhm,
can tell your strength coming out in your voice. And
mhm,
that's what I
mhm.
think is so powerful, that she helped you find this voice that's going
Right.
to allow you to impact millions and millions of people. And man, if look guys, if you ever happen upon the ability, or if someone is reaching out, a child is reaching out, I don't care what age, right?
Mm,
Even mentally and emotionally, adults can still be children, because if they're trapped in the trauma, you be the best version you can for them, and you help them through these troublesome time, and they will always, and I mean always, remember what
yes.
you gave them.
Yes.
Ah,
I know. Such a reward. It's so rewarding because that is exactly what I do for my clients. That is
ah,
exactly how I show up. I look at them and I say, okay, what's going on? What's hard for you? What's holding you back? Where are the obstacles? What are the struggles? And then how do we take you from that place, pivoting into the place where you feel empowered? You now know you are living from and working from and breathing from your own strengths. And you're getting to that best version of you, which lives nowhere else but inside of you.
man, look, we could stop right here, right? Because I literally feel like I say this all the time, but at points in conversations, like I feel like I could run through my wall that's in front of me and just beat my chest and say, there's nothing I can't do. That is
Right.
so powerful, so impactful. Oh man, that's awesome. All right, I have to ask, because I want to hear some bragging. Give us good, beautiful, sweet Anel.
Mhm.
What did you accomplish as a child, as a singing? What did you, because you moved from, everybody else around you is these big athletes. So then you move
Mhm.
to singing, which singing takes, I have two daughters that sing, and they go to
Oh,
singing lessons once a
great.
week. And I watch what they do, and the effort and the time they put into singing. I watch it and I'm like, you guys are athletes. So please
Yes.
take us now that she's built this world, this paradigm that you now live in, right?
Mhm.
And she's like, we're going to extract everything out of you and give you the best version. So help us understand some of these accomplishments. Where did that take you? Where did that, her pushing you, where did that take you to those heights as a child, as a singer?
I think one of the first things that it did for me was it helped me really get a handle on my academics. So, yeah, I was really not a very motivated academic student in high school because my mom was so sick with addiction, depression, anxiety.
Mm.
My dad was off site. My brothers were already gone on to their lives. They were the older ones. I was left at home. So I didn't have that academic support or even really drive to do anything with it. But as I got to be a better and better singer and performer, I began to care more about school because I just began to care more about doing well no matter what I was doing. So I think there was a direct impact in my scholastic achievement. And what that did was it got me into really good schools. So I got into UCLA, and I didn't, a huge school. UCLA is like a city of people. It's like 40,000 people. And I found my way to Schoenberg Hall, which was the music department, where they were holding an ongoing musical theater workshop. Well, usually you couldn't get into that as a freshman, but I decided, what the heck, I'll just try, I'll audition, right?
Mhm.
And I got in. And that right there just helped me feel like, wow, I just got in. And so here I am sort of riding on that success. At the same time, I'm going, I can do this school thing. It's really hard, but I can figure this out. you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm starting to accelerate then. And that led to auditioning for the Carol Burnett Musical Theater Awards. And I did get into that as well, which is sort of unheard of. And, a lot of the performers there were not very happy that a freshman got in,
Mm.
right?
Right, right.
But, there was all of that sort of competitive thing, like, how could she get in? She's just a freshman, right? But I got into the finals. And, I think what that did for me when I was performing that awards night in front of a celebrity panel of judges in a televised event was, it taught me really how to go for that big high stakes performance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where my Hall of Fame swim coach brother came in, because, you know, he takes swimmers to the Olympics, right? And so you've got one shot at it. How are you going to prepare for that? And so I love working with my clients saying, these are the tools, because you can't just say, be confident. You have to have strategies. You have to have tools. You have to have a system, a pre-performance system. What are you going to do before you turn on the camera and go into a really important meeting online? What are you going to do before you step on stage and give a really important presentation with all your colleagues and your boss and everybody there? It can't be an accidental thing. I think it really helped me get much more systematic about how I was approaching performance.
Man, wow. Taught by an expert, trained by a top performer who takes people to the Olympics. Olympics is, to me, still the highest pedigree of all pedigree. You are the best of the world going to the Olympics. Whether you medal or not, you are representing your country. You are the best of the world. Now, before I move on, I do need to ask this, because it's something very important what you said, right? Your four brothers are out of the house. You're home with mom. What would you say? What I want you to inspire the child who is with a parent who is battling their own demons, their own addictions, their own mental illness, because it literally is a mental illness, right? Any addiction to drug, any addiction to anything, anything, it's a mental illness. I want you to just look in the camera and I want you to say, what would you say to a child that is in your position where you came from? What would you say to them? How would you breathe life into them and help them understand that the day will get better if you just stick with it? What would you say?
That's a great question. I would say, first of all, that you need to know that the parent that is struggling really still loves you and really, really believes in you. They just have their own things that they are healing from at this time, but you are loved and you are cherished, even if that parent is struggling. And that love comes from everywhere. Even while your parent is struggling, is hit bottom, you have other people in your life that love you and that are there for you and that will show up for you. And that love, it's everywhere. And I think as children, it's so easy to get trapped in the, I need my mom, I need my dad, right? Mm-hmm. But what we have to realize, even as young people, is that it's not all up to mom and dad. And sometimes they just can't do it. Like, as you said, they're struggling with their own demons, but there are other people that are stronger, that don't have those diseases, that can really, really help you.
Man, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you going back to that. And I really appreciate that, because I know there are probably going to be millions of people that listen to this, and it penetrates them, and it penetrates them deeply. And in what you just said, you can speak from a position of, I've been there. I can say this, but you use the community. You always hear it takes a village to raise a child. Build your own village. Find your own strength. Find the people like Anel and latch on to them. That is empowering. Guys, if you need to take a 20-second timeout, kind of to catch your breath, because we've hit some heavy stuff, and I appreciate Martha being so open about this. So I want to transition a little bit now, because when I saw this and read this, I thought it was just crazy. Selling around the world. I mean, what the heck were you thinking? Or were you thinking? I mean, look, you were 21 and you're like, I'm in UCLA, I'm singing, I got all this stuff. Well, let's go sell. Please take us to that place and how you made that decision of, time to go selling.
I was 21 years old and I was successful at UCLA. As we've talked about, I had built this road to a new life for myself. And yet I felt that, again, I wasn't completely at peace within my own skin. And I realized that there was a program called Semester at Sea, which is run through the University of Pittsburgh. And they take you on a shipboard education program. It's this big, large ship. It was a Taiwanese owned ship at the time. And you sail completely around the globe in 90 days and you visit 13 different countries. And I saw the advertisement for that and I thought, I want to do that. And I think there was a part of me, Cameron, that was realizing that even though I had had tremendous success, and even though I was performing at peak levels, I hadn't found what I was really looking for yet. And that's why I went around the world.
Okay, let me ask this then. Do you find that a lot with high performers? And you've been around. Look, if there's any guys listening, if there's anybody who's been around high performers, she's been around them. 4 brothers, all accomplishments. Brothers taking people to the Olympics. Do you find that kind of a common trend with high performers, that they're doing something they don't really love to do it, but they don't know anything else, and they're kind of trapped in this their own worst enemy of, I can't leave because if I do, I'm going to look like a failure. But I hate where I'm at, but I have to stay here. Do you see that? Do you see that as a theme, or, how do you recognize that if I'm a top performer?
That's a wonderful insight. And it's absolutely true, because I think what happens with the top performers I've worked with, whether they are singers or they are public speakers, is they're doing the thing, they're putting 110% of their energy into it, but it's very goal focused, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's extremely goal focused, which sort of ties into this whole theme we see in our society. Our society, particularly in the US, it teaches us that we are what we have, we are what we do, and we are what other people say about us. And, we know that's just not true. Mm-hmm. But if you're spending 110% of your energy in the goal, you can be missing the beauty of the journey, which is where the present moment lives, and it's where true happiness lives. And so, it's like we have to somehow integrate, yes, I'm going to go for it, but I need to not miss my life. Mm-hmm. And I need to be feeling and tapping into the joy of my relationships, my community, my family, my life. Olympians, they don't do anything but that. Mm-hmm. You can't get that good if you're not doing it all the time. So what happens then? Like what we're going to come back to a question, but I need to stay on this point. What happens then that you see with these look, guys, you don't have to be a high performance. You don't have to be a high performer. You could be working a 9 to 5, 40 hours a week and being like, I hate what I do, but because it puts food on the table and a roof over my head and my broken down car, driving, this is the only thing, right? So once I'm finished doing something that I really am not passionate about, what happens in your experience and what you've seen throughout your life? What happens to those individuals that once they leave what they hate, do they just kind of crumble? Do they actually are like, now I can go do what I want? Obviously it's a blanket statement, but help us, bring us into some insight on what you see. I see a lot of, mostly when I'm working with my clients, they're stepping forward. They're transcending their old belief systems of who they are and who they think they are. Because part of success, really, there's 3 pillars to success that I talk about. And the first pillar is having inner peace. If you don't have inner peace, you could have all the money in the world, you could have all the toys in the world, you could have the biggest house in the world, your kids could go to the best colleges. You are not successful. The second piece for that success is to really know who you are. What are your strengths? And I teach a lot using my own methodology of what are your voice strengths? Who are you really? And using the Clifton strengths. Who are you? What are your strengths? You've got to know that. And the third piece of success is accessing in each moment the joy, or what we could call the bliss, of your own self in every single moment, no matter what else is going on around you. So once you have those tools of really understanding who you are, and you have to have strategies for accessing peace, and that's where all the tools that I teach in the mind-body space come in, and you understand how you're going to access joy outside of everything going perfectly all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to feel joy? And knowing that it comes from inside you and not from a set of circumstances, then no matter what you are doing, you are living successfully.
No, I want to jump out of my seat and scream, right? That is so powerful. Like, good night. Are you kidding me? Not once did you mention anything about monetary or anything about what's in my bank account or the clothes that I wear or the cars that I drive. Not once did you say that defines success. It's about understanding who you are. It's understanding about your own inner peace, about remembering where you come from. That's a big thing.
Yes.
And finding true happiness and joy in your life, not in my neighbor's life, not on my social media life, right? None of that.
None of it.
You find what works for you. And once you find that bliss, you just stay in it. You just stay in that zone. Oh my gosh. Stop it right now. Stop. Yeah. That's fantastic. We could be done. We won't be, obviously. I got a lot more coming from us. But all right. So let's tie this all together. You have a quote, and I need to read this because everybody's dying to know this answer. I love this quote you did this from a stage presentation you did. I watched a YouTube video on it. It says, your voice is your calling card. Okay, let me repeat that. Your voice is your calling card. How did selling around the world help you find your voice?
Sailing around the world took me from being in my own little world at UCLA, right? My own very perfect little world at UCLA, to seeing and hearing other voices, other cultures, other ways of being, and seeing the unity that underlies all of humanity, despite all of our differences and our different ways of speaking and living and dressing and talking and worshiping, and all of that differences, seeing all the differences, and then seeing the underlying humanity that connects us all. And when I really started to dive into that, and that's when I found the path of Kriya Yoga and learned how to meditate and learned how to use affirmations and learned how to center myself in my own body so that I could be present for and absorb other people's realities. My voice completely changed, and it became more of who I really am. It wasn't about winning and achieving and succeeding on a worldly level. It was about, how can I show up and really serve people? How can I help them become the best versions of themselves? How can I bring more light to people's worlds who are struggling and don't feel heard and don't feel seen and can't get a seat at the table because of their color or their gender or their age?
Guys, I mean, what more do you say? What more do you say? If you want a blissful life, you want a life that's full and purposeful, go find and go serve somebody. You're in a funk, go serve. My mom used to say this all the time. If you have a bad attitude, go find somebody and help them have a better attitude, and you will in turn will have a better attitude. That is powerful. What Martha just shared from someone who has been around the globe, professionally has all these accolades, from a family who has a ton of accolades, and she's keeping it so simple, just saying, find who you are, get your inner peace, and be real with yourself.